Now, a longtime veteran GOP strategist has come out swinging against Donald Trump. Now, this is Pete Werner. Now, or I'm sorry, Pete Wehner. I almost want to say Wiener, W-E-H-N-E-R. So I don't know, I'll call him Wiener. He is a senior fellow at a conservative think tank and has served in the last 3 Republican administrations. So this guy, he is your establishment Republican through and through. And you can't get more establishment than this guy. So it is no surprise that he said the Republican Party under Donald Trump has become what he called a conduit of chaos. A conduit of chaos. Now, that's a really nice way, and that's nice, right? That's a nice way of calling it. I would actually say that it's a gigantic clusterfuck. But that's just me. Now, in a Tuesday op-ed published by the New York Times, Wiener went off on dysfunction in the Trump White House. Now, before I get into what he says, now there's a reason the establishment Republicans dislike Donald Trump, and it's got nothing to do with his policies. And I want to make that very, very clear. Now, establishment Republicans, they love his policies. For the most part, they just hate the fact that his style, that the way he does things, is actually preventing them from getting anything done. Now, in this op-ed, he writes, quote, "Chaos in the West Wing can be crippling, as White House aides in a constant state of uncertainty, distrustful of colleagues, fearful that they might be excoriated or fired, find it nearly impossible to do their jobs." Well, you know, we've reported a lot about that, how nobody trusts each other. There are constant leaks coming out of the White House, people getting fired, people afraid of getting fired. It's a mess. It's a disaster. It's sad. So, of course, it makes sense that the way he's running his White House is a lot like the way that he runs his businesses. Straight into the ground. Well, yes, but look, he likes to foster competition and dissension in the ranks. He thinks that actually is going to lead to better ideas. It doesn't, and that's not how government works. It's not how it's supposed to work. But anyway, Wiener continues. "A presidency characterized by pandemonium invades and infects that space, leaving people unsettled and on edge. And this, in turn, leads to greater polarization, to feelings of alienation and anger, to unrest, and even violence." Okay, so look, while that is certainly true, I do have to point out the Republican Party under President Obama. See, President Obama's administration is not something that you would call, or you would describe as pandemonium. That was actually a very well-oiled machine. And the Democratic establishment, if anything, is pretty good at being the establishment and serving its own interests and serving itself. And it was really good at doing so. So in his White House, you had the opposite of chaos and dysfunction, right? Pandemonium. Well, what did you have on the right wing, on the right side of the aisle during that presidency? Well, you had a lot of alienation, a lot of anger, a lot of unrest, and even a lot of violence. So Trump is not a unique phenomenon, okay? And look, a lot of it has to do with the right wing's irrational hatred of a black man being in the White House. Look, racism was a huge factor in that, as well as propaganda. And we've talked about that. Now, as far as Trump is concerned, again, he is not the cause of this polarization that's happening now. And this is what the writer's saying. This Pete Werner is saying, no. Trump is the cause of all of this problem that's going on in the country right now. All this, there's resistance, this polarization, the thing that actually created the shooting at the Capitol baseball game, right? Because after that happened, Republicans are suddenly like, oh my God, let's talk about clamping down our rhetoric, because it has just gotten way out of control. You weren't saying that when President Obama was in office, because you were the guys that were cheering on that phenomena. And now they're turning it against Trump. Some are anyway. This guy certainly is. But I got to point out that just like Obama wasn't the cause of that, Trump is also not the cause of this polarization. It has existed pre-Obama, pre-Trump, and to some extent even pre-Bush. Okay, to some extent, though it did get ramped up during the Bush administration. I understand that. And as far as Trump is concerned, he's not the cause, he's the effect, or at least one of the effects of this polarization. Now, there's also the effect of the Fox Newsification of the right. Now, what it did, and we've talked about this, there was another right-wing radio host, and his name escapes me right now, but we've talked about him before, who pointed out, he's like, hey, man, for the last 30 years, we have put ourselves into a bubble. We have steadily rejected what is factual, what is reality, right? We've completely gotten rid of that, and we have created our own right-wing mentality, our own right-wing reality, where no facts can pervade. And if you dare bring in something like an article from the New York Times that says like, hey, climate's changing, or the rich people are getting richer, well, they're immediately going to say, no, that's the New York Times, fake news. Fake news, CNN, fake news, Washington Post, fake news. It's all fake news. All we can do is trust Fox News. We can trust Breitbart. We can trust Rush Limbaugh. Those are the only people that we can trust. Okay, we can't trust anybody else because they're fake news. And of course, that has led to, obviously, massive misinformation, anger, and lots of conspiracy theories. Now, of course, Weiner doesn't see this. Okay, he doesn't see the problem here. He says, the spirit of instability in government will cause Americans to lose confidence in our public institutions. When citizens lose that basic faith in their government, it leads to corrosive cynicism and the acceptance of conspiracy theories. One result is that the informal and unwritten rules of political and human interaction, which are at the core of civilization, are undone. So he thinks that, no, it's not really related to the right wing. It's actually related to, now that Trump's in office, the way that he is, we have lost all our faith in all of our institutions. Okay. Look, he makes some points, and those are valid points, but again, I got to point to the right. Again, thanks to the rhetoric and obstructionism of the right, so many Americans have lost faith in that system. It's true. Now, add on to the left, of course, the massive influence of corporate America and lobbying money, which leads to massively popular programs not even being considered by the government, by Congress. We have a problem. Things like single-payer and marijuana decriminalization at the federal level, higher minimum wage, which is supported by a majority of Americans, even common-sense gun laws, which are also supported by a vast majority of Americans. They have no chance of making it to office because of those special interest money. So, and because of that and other factors, of course, people have lost faith in the government because they know it doesn't represent them anymore. And again, I have to point out that part of it is that because of the Republicans, they never wanted to govern. They don't like to govern. In fact, they like to ungovern. And they said, I mean, Ronald Reagan, go back all the way to him. And he says, well, what is it? The words that should scare every American, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Those are the words. He said those are the words that you should fear. So this has been way back before Donald Trump. The Republican Party of today is not about governing. It's about breaking down government. It's about destroying it. And it's about dismantling it and selling off the pieces to giant corporations. And in order to do that, they first have to convince people that the government's broken by breaking it. And that's what they do. That's why so many people have lost faith in our governmental institutions, is because the Republicans have been actively sabotaging it. Again, Pete Weiner doesn't talk about this, okay? Doesn't talk about this whatsoever. Now, as far as conspiracies, right? Well, okay, now we have a situation where Alex Jones has access to the president. Alex Jones is a guy that believes that children are being held in slavery on Mars. I kid you not. He also believes that, well, the devil has taken over and that he's trying to prevent us from going into space. I guess in order to not find that Martian slave colony. This guy is not a smart person. Okay, he's a conspiracy mongerer, right? He believes that an alien force has taken over. Aliens working with Satan to destroy us all. It's crazy, But this guy is allowed into the White House. He has press credentials. That's insane. Okay, look, and you have him, you have you have Glenn Beck, and you have other right-wingers that push these crazy conspiracies. I mean, do you guys remember? Obama's coming for your guns. The left is coming for your guns. They're going to take your guns. They're going to put you in FEMA camps. Are any of you in FEMA camps? Any right-wingers that might be watching, are you in FEMA camps right now? Are you watching from the FEMA camp? No, you're not. And you still have your guns. It's ridiculous, but those are the conspiracy theories that we have on the right. And then, of course, you have Donald Trump, who got famous with his birther nonsense, at least in politics. So, conspiracies, of course, are very, very prevalent on the right because they have their own internal media structure where they do not trust factual reporting because it doesn't align with them. Look, creeping Sharia, another good example. Or this, you see so many online, so many different places, people who are commenting who are conservative saying, well, the liberals are just trying to destroy America. They want to hand over America to the Muslims. That's crazy. America is secular. We don't want any religion in power. We don't want Christianity. We don't want Muslims. We don't want anybody who is religious. Not that you can't have a religion and be in power, obviously, but that religion we shouldn't put above anybody else. And it shouldn't be used to govern America. Now, interestingly enough, and I'm gonna probably catch a lot of heat with some of you guys for saying this, but we also have conspiracy theories on the left. For example, we have the Russia narrative, which is a pretty good example here. There are a lot of conspiracies that are based on kernels of truth, right? Now, did Trump collude with Russia? I have no idea. There's not enough evidence right there to prove it hands down. Now, are there some financial ties? Some weird coincidences? Sure. But some on the center left think that that's enough to throw out the charges of treason and have him impeached. No, there's not enough evidence yet. Or else they actually would have done so already, or at least tried. They got to have evidence. And I don't know if that evidence exists. I'm certainly interested in finding out whether or not it does. And then, of course, you also have some conspiracy theories like Seth Rich. We don't have evidence that the DNC had him killed or that Hillary Clinton had him killed. I'm sorry, we don't have that evidence. So right now, I'm not buying that conspiracy theory. That's what I'm calling a conspiracy theory. And I'm also not buying the Russia story without conclusive evidence. So interestingly enough, we do see some of this play out on the left because there's so much distrust in our institutions. The DNC is an institution and they've done so much shady shit. They've earned our distrust. But at the same time, I don't think they're actively going out and murdering people. I'm just saying. And again, you could probably disagree with that. You guys are going to get angry with me. Show me some evidence. Show me some proof. Anything. Show me something conclusive. And I will look at it. I'll change my mind if there's enough evidence out there. But anyway, back to our political point. The distrust in our politics. You can see that this goes way beyond Donald Trump. This has existed both on the left and on the right. But more so, way more on the right. Because again, they've created this insulated media bubble where they don't believe in facts or evidence. Again, climate change, right? As far as Trump goes, he's a symptom. He's not a cause, okay? Now, still, Werner will disagree. And he'll go on to accurately describe President Trump as, quote, arguably the most disruptive and transgressive president in American history. Hey, man, you're going to get no argument from me there. In fact, that's actually why he won. Many of his supporters said, we're tired of politics as usual. We want it to be disrupted. That's why we voted for Trump. We want the disruption, anything to change what's going on right now. It's got to change. We can't live like this anymore. And I understand that. Now, Weiner he goes on to say that it's actually going to get worse. He says the disruption is only going to increase, both because he's facing criticism that seems to trigger him psychologically, and because his theory of management involves the cultivation of chaos. He has shown throughout his life a defiant refusal to be disciplined His disordered personality thrives on mayhem and upheaval, on vicious personal attacks in ceaseless conflict. Again, a lot of that's true. Okay. Now, but you got to understand he's coming at it from an establishment perspective. Look, Donald Trump, you got to fall in line. You got to be a good little boy and quietly sign everything the Republicans in Congress hand you. That includes the repeal of Obamacare. That includes the giant tax cuts. Okay, we got to get those signed, man. We got to get those signed. So just shut up, quit making drama, and so they stop paying attention to us while we destroy the country, while we loot the country. Sorry, I'm getting a little hyperbolic there. Now, instead, what Donald Trump has done is that, now I'm going to do the literal opposite, and he's going to go on, and he's going to, his own personality traits and habits have ended up sabotaging legislation that people like Weiner are in favor of. Things like giant tax cuts for the rich and deregulation. So what these Republicans are saying in this message, and you can see it from Joe Scarborough as well, is that, hey, Trump, shut the fuck up, be a good boy, and just sign this legislation. Get your ego out of it. You know who you serve, and you're supposed to serve us. It's no surprise, though, to me, that many Republicans thought they could get what they wanted from Trump. And here they saw a guy that was very thin-skinned, but if you praise him enough, if you tell him, good job, Donnie boy, good job, that he'll do anything you tell him to. Well, that turned out to be incredibly false. And so, look, these people, they also subscribe to the idea that all they wanted in a president, and we've heard this in a quote before, they wanted somebody just smart enough to hold a pen. Well, they got it, but hey, be careful what you wish for, because what they got was that, but it was attached to a giant ego. And from a very thin-skinned orange man baby. So again, be careful what you wish for, because Republicans got it. Now, the final irony here is that Weiner doesn't agree with Trump, or I'm sorry, he does agree with Trump on policy. Again, they want the same things, but his problem is that Trump is incompetent. He can't get it done. He's not a closer, right? Now, the other thing that's interesting that helps us on the left is that he's been very good at pointing out the flaws in our system simply by being there and helping to exacerbate those. By his bumbling idiocy and constant lying and attention grabbing, he is unintentionally shining the light on the bullshit inherent in modern politics. And we got to thank him for that, at least. Now, finally, Weiner says, we have as president the closest thing to a nihilist in our history. A man who believes in little or nothing, who has the impulse to burn down rather than build up. When the president eventually faces a genuine crisis, his ignorance and inflammatory instincts will make everything worse. And of course, I agree with that. And to that I say, of course, this is the fruit of your efforts on the right. You have spent decades building up the situation with the help of neoliberal corporate Democrats that to usher in this kind of president, this kind of lunacy into the White House. You helped create this monster. And now you're a little frustrated because, hey, that monster slipped your leash and is on a rampage. But this is what you wanted. This is what you wanted to create. Someone who watches and consumes Fox News, who holds the levers of power. And now that monster threatens the entire world. Now, will the Republicans gain any sort of self-awareness and decide to come back to reality and try to undo the damage that they did? Doubtful. I don't think that they'll do that, and that is sad. And there's no telling how much damage is going to happen between now and the next time someone who's a little bit more sane and rational takes over. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.